Welcome back to the channel. In this video I'll be checking out the brand new 70mm S500 rear view dash camera. It provides a center rear view mirror on top of your existing vehicle center rear view mirror, or you can replace the center rear view mirror with a third-party mount to mount it directly to the windshield. The front unit contains a front-facing dash camera which uses the Sony Starvis 2 IMX675 image sensor, and there is a rear camera provided that is waterproof to mount on the outside of your vehicle, and you can use it also as a backup reversing camera to make it easier to back up your vehicle more safely. I'll be going through the unboxing, installation of the main unit, some power consumption information, sample footage, and then I'll give you my list of pros and cons at the end. 70mm did provide the S500 review unit free of charge for this review, but I'm not being paid any additional financial compensation to produce the review video. So, let's get into it. This video is broken into a variety of chapters. If there's one of particular interest to you, look at the time index and jump to that section, or expand the description section of this video and use the link in that section. Now, let's get into the video. In this section, I'm going to go through an unboxing of the 70mm S500 rear view dash camera. It comes with a Sony Starvis 2 IMX675 image sensor for the front camera, with a resolution of 2592 by 1944 on the front camera. It is a fixed setting. There is no changing that resolution setting, and it records at 30 frames per second. It has a 9.35-inch full laminated touchscreen, a reversing assistance feature, which means it will display the rear camera view with guidance lines to allow you to more safely back up your vehicle, a split screen mode, a picture-in-picture mode, and a single channel display mode, front only and rear only mode for the various camera views. And it has HDR or high dynamic range dual channel recording. Looking inside the box, we have the S500 main unit. The 9.35-inch touchscreen is shown here with a protective plastic cover. On the left side, it's noting the fact that that's the side that can be extended outwards to avoid the center rear view mirror. In the center section, it's talking about adjusting the display area by the up and down swiping. It's talking about the screen brightness adjustments by swiping left and right. The connectors on the top, the AV in is for the rear camera, the SD section is for the micro SD card, the DC in is for the power supply cable that's supplied in the box or the hardware kit. On the bottom edge we have the power button, which can be used to power down the unit or to turn on and off the screen. Looking at the front of the S500, we have the speaker on the left hand side of this picture. We have the rubber straps with multiple adjustment slots to allow you to strap the S500 main unit to your center rear view mirror. On the right side, we have the front camera and the lens for it. The Sony Starvis 2 IMX675 image sensor is used in this dash camera. The aperture is 1.8 with a fixed resolution of 2592 by 1944, 30 frames per second. The camera lens is adjustable up, down, left, right, and it is rotatable to allow you to get an even horizon line in the field of view. Here's a closer look at the connection ports on the S500 main unit on the very top. The DC in, we can see it's a micro USB power connection port that's compatible with the cable provided in the box or the hardware and kit. We have a micro SD card slot with a maximum capacity supported of 128 gigabytes, and then the port for the connection from the rear camera. Looking at the bottom edge of the S500, on the left side is the internal microphone. In the very center is the power button. A long press of the power button can be used to power on and off the S500, and a short press can be used to toggle on and off the display screen. This is the provided installation tool to help you route cables throughout your vehicle. 70mm has provided a cigarette lighter adapter or power port adapter to power the S500 using the included USB cable. The top connection port is the one to use to power the S500, which provides 5 volts at up to 2.4 amps, and the bottom one is 5 volts at up to 1 amp max. This is the provided USB-A to micro USB power cable with a length of 3.5 meters or 11.48 feet. Next we have the two user manuals, the S500 user manual on top and the backup camera, the RC13, on the bottom. This is the rear camera provided with the S500. It's the MyDrive RC13. It is a waterproof camera that can be mounted on the outside of your vehicle. I've listed all the cable links to show you how long they are so you can see if those will be appropriate for your vehicle. If you wish to take advantage of the backup assistance feature, you need to connect the backup signal cable to power to the reverse lights in your vehicle. Here are some additional views of the RC13 mounting bracket. It does have an adhesive pad on it if you wish to use that to mount it to the vehicle. It also comes with 2 screws that can be used to mount that bracket to your vehicle. It can also be rotated 180 degrees if that's more appropriate for your installation. In my installation, for testing purposes, I did not wish to drill any holes into the rear hatch of my vehicle, nor drill a hole for the cable to run through, so I 3D printed using an ABS Plus filament, a mounting block that allowed me to aim the camera appropriately through the rear glass of my vehicle. 70mi did provide a MyDrive UP02 3-wire hardwire kit, so I could test the parking mode features of the S500. It does have a low voltage cutoff protection feature for your vehicle's battery, but it does have a fixed value in a 12 volt system of 11.8 volts. That could be concerning since some vehicles are very sensitive when they go below 12.2 or 12.0 volts. I asked 70mi to provide a supported memory card for the S500, and they provided a 128GB 70mi branded memory card. In this section, I'm going to give you a quick overview of the features of the 70mi S500 rear view dash camera, comparing it against a dash camera that I reviewed recently, a Viofo A229 Plus 2-channel with a rear camera that comes in a 3-channel, 2-channel, and 1-channel, but I'm comparing it against the 2-channel configuration in this particular case. And I wanted you to see that particular dash camera because it also uses the Sony Starvis 2 IMX675 image sensor for the front camera image sensor. We can see the processor information, the fact that the image sensors are listed there, although the rear image sensor for the Viofo is also the IMX675. You can see the lens specifications, the field of view, and notice that the max capacity though for the S500 is limited to 128GB, but based on the bitrate of the videos that I'll show you in the power consumption test section, that should be just fine for many hours of driving footage on the memory card. Of course, we have the 9.35-inch IPS touchscreen. And moving on to the video codec used, it's an H.265 codec, or HEVC, for the S500 versus H.264 with the A229 Plus. If your computer is not capable of playing H.265 content, keep that in mind when you're looking at this particular product. The video resolutions are fixed on the S500, 2592 by 1944, 30 frames per second for the front, and 1920 by 1080, 25 frames per second for the rear, and there's no user selections for those whatsoever within the configuration screens. The cameras on the S500 both support HDR capabilities for high dynamic range. The Wi-Fi is limited to 2.4 GHz only on the S500, and there is no GPS receiver in the S500, so there's no ability to set the clock from the GPS time information, nor track speed or location information with the S500. Both the S500 and the A229 Plus use a supercapacitor inside the unit to properly shut down the dash cameras when power is lost, and that's better than a lithium-based battery inside the dash camera in my opinion, based on lithium batteries having problems in hotter environments. So I only review products that use supercapacitors for that particular function. Moving on to power options, we have the USB power adapter included in the box for both of them, the UP02 hardware kit, which I'm using in my testing of the S500. For voice commands and voice notifications, the S500 does have the ability with a set of voice commands to control the screen and whether you see front or rear cameras, so that's nice, but there are no voice notifications. Everything is displayed on the screen in a text prompt of some sort if something is to be notified to the user, whereas the A229 Plus has voice notifications as well. In the parking mode section, the S500 has 2 parking modes which can be used together, and they have settings in the parking security section that you can toggle on and off, and I will go into further information in the power consumption section of this video on how those behave and whether that's appropriate for your particular parking mode needs. And lastly, I have on the bottom the unique feature that the S500 has is, of course, the backup camera feature. A traditional dash camera does not have that feature, but the S500 does, and that function does seem to work fairly well, although there is some fine-tuning I would like to see 70mi make in the firmware to make that a little bit more user-friendly. In this section, I'll show you some sample footage from the 70mi S500 rearview dash camera. I'll compare the front footage with a Viofo A229 Plus which uses the same Sony Starvis 2 IMX675 image sensor, and I'll compare the rear camera footage with a 1080p camera from a Blackview DR970X Box Plus camera. The first two video samples will be the S500 against itself, day versus night. I have front camera samples and then rear camera samples. The nighttime footage has been speed matched to the front camera footage so that they show the same positions on the road so you can see what's visible during the day and night. And the front camera footage in the upper right corner has a blue hue to it. That's a tint that's internal to the front windshield that I cannot avoid by adjusting the camera. So just be aware it's not a defect in the video sample from the S500. The next two video samples will be the S500 front camera against the Viofo A229 Plus front camera. The first segment will be day footage and the second segment will be night footage. And there will be some plate captures to show you how well each one does in this particular situation. In this nighttime comparison, the S500 and the A229 Plus both have their high dynamic range feature enabled. You'll notice a bit of flaring when it comes to objects that are well illuminated in the S500 footage compared to the A229 Plus. There still could be improvement for the A229 Plus for high dynamic range, but it does a better job in most cases compared to the S500. In this segment, I continue the comparison between the S500 and the A229 Plus front cameras, but in a more well-lit nighttime environment. This is a typical comparison you see in many dash camera reviews, so here's my version of it. The next two video segments will compare the S500's RC13 rear camera against the Blackview DR970X Box Plus RC1 rear camera. Both record 1920 by 1080 resolution video, but the S500's rear camera only records at 25 frames per second versus 30 frames per second with the Blackview product. The next two video sample segments have S500 front camera and rear camera footage from day and night, and it's also at full screen resolution, so you can take a look more closely at the video samples. In this section, I'll show you the power consumption test results from my testing of the 70mi S500 rear view dash camera. I was using the original firmware version 1.0.17 WW for the S500 since I was not able to update the firmware right away after receiving the product. I also was powering the unit with the hardware kit, the UP02, so I could perform parking mode configuration tests in this power consumption test suite. Now let's take a look at the column headers. On the left we have the configuration, so in each row you'll see a description of the particular test being run for that particular set of test results. The next set of columns, the columns in blue, are the observed milliamp values using a Fluke 117 multimeter over a 5-minute or longer period of time. Moving to the right, I have the min, max, and average watt values. Those are the milliamps at 12.6 volts converted to watts. The next column is the recording mode for that particular test. And then on the far right are any notes that I have for that particular test. Now looking at the configuration column, the first 4 columns have the normal mode recording tests. That's with the screen off, screen on, or you put it into reverse and has the reverse assistance lines displayed, or you simply are connecting from the 70mi app over the 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi connection and taking a look at a live view. These power consumption results are fairly typical for a 2-channel dash camera, and these are being powered by the charging system of the vehicle, so that's not very concerning as far as how much power is consumed, and it's fairly typical for a 2-channel dash camera. In the upper right corner, you'll see in the notes column, I note the bitrate for the front and rear video files, basically 24 megabits per second for the front camera video file, and 12 megabits per second for the rear camera video file. Moving on to the parking mode test section, the first 2 rows in that section are related to the collision detection parking mode. That's not having the time-lapse parking mode enabled, just collision detection. And when it goes into parking mode, when you turn off the accessory power from the vehicle, using the UP02 to power the unit, it will go into a very deep sleep, only consuming 2 milliamps or 0.03 watts. And it will allow you to run this in parking mode for a very long period of time using your vehicle's battery or a dashcam battery pack. When an impact event does occur, it takes the S500 approximately 6 seconds to begin recording a 30-second video file with video and audio for the front and rear cameras. So you have a time period between the impact and the start of the video of approximately 6 seconds. Moving on to time-lapse parking mode, you can see that it consumes about 240 milliamps on average, or 3.02 watts. It only creates a front camera video file. It is a full resolution 2592 by 1944 at 30 frames per second playback speed, but it's recorded at 1 frame per second. While in time-lapse parking mode and an impact occurs, the behavior of the camera will depend on the collision detection setting. They are interrelated. If the collision detection setting is turned off and only time-lapse is enabled in the parking security settings, when the impact occurs, the time-lapse video will simply continue recording for the front camera only. If you have collision detection enabled in the parking security settings, it will continue recording for about 4 seconds in time-lapse mode for the front camera, pause about 1 second to transition to the collision detection recordings, and record 30-second video files for the front and rear cameras. But that does mean that the rear of the vehicle is not included in the recording for that first 5 seconds after the impact. So impact occurs, front transitions to collision detection after about 5 seconds, but it does have 4 seconds of time-lapse video, but the rear has no video from the impact to the 5-second point when it begins the collision detection recording. Keep that in mind if that will be sufficient for your parking recording needs. In this section, I show how much power the S500 consumes if you simply turn it off by long pressing the power button on the bottom of the front unit. You might want to do this if you arrive at home and you don't need it to record anything in parking mode while parked in your garage. You long press the power button and it will reduce the power consumption to 2 milliamps or 0.03 watts, just like in collision detection parking mode. But it's not going to record anything while parked in that mode. When you go to start the vehicle, it will resume operations like normal. So this is a way to greatly reduce it, especially if you use time-lapse parking mode by default. It will reduce it down to this very minimal level while parked in your garage. In this last section of the power consumption chart, I like to show how much the power adapters themselves consume, so you can see how much of the results that are listed above are consumed just by the power adapters. The UP02 hardwire kit and the cigarette lighter adapter by themselves only consume 1 milliamp or 0.01 watts, so it's very minimal in the overall load placed on the vehicle's battery or the dashcam battery pack. And on the lower right corner, I have my estimated parking mode operation times when the S500 is powered by the UP02 hardwire kit and a dashcam battery pack. These estimates are good approximations. With the low voltage cutoff in the UP02 at 11.8 volts, it will actually reduce the times a bit since the dashcam battery packs can go below that safely to power the dash camera, but they will be cut off early by that low voltage cutoff. And since it is 11.8 volts, that will draw your vehicle's battery if you connect the UP02 to your vehicle's fuse box to power the dash camera, but you have to consider which is best for your particular situation. In this section, I'm going to show you how to use the 70mi app on an Android 10 tablet to interact with the 70mi S500 rearview dash camera. To use the 70mi app, you must have a user account to use it successfully and agree to the user agreement and the privacy policy. I have created that account previously, so I'm not showing you the actual specifying the user account information. I also had added the S500 to my account before, but I deleted it, so I can show you the steps to add it in the 70mi app. and you click on the rear view dash camera type of dash camera, and then it tells you to make sure the hotspot is turned on. So you go to the S500 and turn on the hotspot. Make sure you note the 8-digit code for the password, and if you're connecting the first time, you're going to have to provide that password when connecting using the Android Wi-Fi connection applet here. And I'm going to select that, but I've already typed in the password, so I don't need to do that here. And once that is fully connected, I return to the 70My app, and then it will ask you to authorize the device by pressing the power button on the lower portion of the S500 to make sure that you're actually connecting to a device that you have access to. And once that's done successfully, it will grant you access into that dash camera. And it'll also warn you that the device will be locked while connected over Wi-Fi to the app. This use of the 70My app is with the device already added to my user account. I've found it best to start the 70My app without the Wi-Fi connection to the dash camera already established. That way it can retrieve the devices and information from your user account. And then when in the app, it will prompt you to connect to it, as you're seeing here. And I'm using the Android Wi-Fi applet to go ahead and connect to the Wi-Fi hotspot from the S500. And then once that's done, I go back into the 70My app and then continue connecting to the dash camera, and it'll bring up the live view. And in this situation, we have a connection where I'm going to go into the album, and once we're into the album, the recording will be paused, and we'll let you know that on the screen of the S500. And you can see the various types of videos that have been recorded, and in the all category, it goes by date, and then I'm going backwards in date here, and into last week where I was driving the vehicle. And then I clicked on one particular video, and this is over a 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi connection, and the playback is actually pretty quick. But if you want to download the video file, I found that it's a little bit slow since it's a 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi connection. And in this case, it was 4.15 megabytes per second, which isn't horrible, but I've seen a lot better with 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi connections on other dash cameras. And once it's downloaded, you can play it from your video download cache on the device, and it plays quite well. Then if we go back in, we can go again into the device. It says not connected, but if you click on it, it actually goes back into that since we're connected over Wi-Fi. In this section, I'm going to use the album feature again, but I'm going to take advantage of the timeline function. And in that particular case, I'm going to go through the various dates, and you can see that there are different categories of video content that are available here, and it shows you on the timeline in the bottom that you can use to scroll back and forth within that date. And there's loop recording, emergency, parking surveillance, and time-lapse photography. So I find an appropriate section, and in this case it's the time-lapse recording for a parking mode session that I had on that date. And then I moved down to this parking mode session. Again, it's another time-lapse video. And then I'm going to go through and actually determine a section that I want to download. And there's a nice feature where you can identify a particular section of video that you would like to target to be a download to your device. And once you're there, and when you click on the download button on the screen, you can pick how long of a video, or at least of the content you need to have. Since I selected a 1-minute time segment that spanned 2 different video files, both video files will be downloaded as a single video file by the 70My app. And the download speed was a bit slower than it was for the individual file that I showed earlier. So it would be very nice if 70My added 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi connectivity to the S500. So again, that file is downloaded. So we go back to the main screen here. Again, it says not connected, but we are. And in this case, we're going to go into settings, and in this screen you can go through the various settings that are available on the device. Also, those settings are available on the S500 itself. And I'm going to show you the about screen here, which will show the firmware version. You can also get data logs to be downloaded, which I've used in the past to send to 70My to diagnose something. And on this screen again, we can go ahead and switch views. We went from the front camera, and I just went to the rear camera, taking a lovely view of the garage door. And in this case, back to the front camera, I can turn on and off the audio recording from the app. And then from here, I can also have it turn it back on. And then the next one is to take a photo, and I'll add it to the photo album library. So that's the general use of the 70My app on an Android 10 tablet. In this section, I'll show you the steps to attach the S500 main unit to your vehicle's center rearview mirror. That is the default installation strategy for this product. On the front-facing side of the S500 main unit, There are rubber pads here to insulate the S500 body from the vehicle's center rearview mirror, so it's not plastic rubbing on whatever the surface is on your vehicle's center rearview mirror. These straps are used to extend over the mirror body and connect to these hooks on the other side. You will have to extend the main lens here off to the side to allow for the width of your vehicle's mirror. It can vary based on the type of mirror installed in your vehicle. I want to quickly discuss why I ended up going actually with a third-party mount which doesn't use the center rearview mirror whatsoever, and that was because the original mirror in my vehicle, 2006 Toyota Highlander Hybrid, has a very bad problem over the last few years, especially in warmer weather, where there's whether that's a design slot in there or a crack, the plastic ball socket here just gets so loose that it can barely hold its own weight. So there was no way that the S500 additional weight would be properly supported by this mirror. So I took a mirror that I removed from my project vehicle when I first received it, a 2014 Chevrolet Caprice PPV, and it had a flip mirror as well and a metal attachment bracket here, and this is much stiffer than the one from the Highlander Hybrid, but I found that even with that approach, this one's still a little too flimsy, be it the mount itself or the main mirror body, that it wouldn't really support the S500 without the reflection in the S500 mirror glass bouncing around a lot to be somewhat distracting while driving. But this is the one I'll be using for the installation demonstration here. So let's bring this back into view. And let's take it out of the foam here, so but I'm going to shift it here so I don't scratch the glass. And then we're going to extend this out to the side to allow for the width of the mirror that I have. And you basically bring this up to the center rearview mirror in your vehicle. You'd lay it on there in some manner like that, or lift it up, and then reach around and bring the strap around the mirror body in there we go. Again, that particular hole in the strap to bring the most amount of tension on it to hold it. Now this at the extreme, it would vary depending on the size of the mirror in your vehicle. And let's move this over to the side and do the same thing over here. And there we go. So we can see that we now have the mirror strapped to the S500 main body, and that should hold it, and the rubber should keep it basically in place. There is a small amount of movement allowed if you need to shift it around a little bit, and you want to make sure that the mirror body on your vehicle mirror is not touching the plastic on here, otherwise you'll get some rubbing or unwanted noises. So let's take this out of the way, and we can see now that the S500 is attached to the vehicle's center rearview mirror. In this section, I'm going to show you an alternative approach of using a third-party mounting bracket to mount the 70mm S500 front camera unit to your vehicle's front windshield. The default installation approach is to use the straps to mount the S500 to your vehicle's existing center rearview mirror. Depending on the strength of the mounting bracket for your vehicle's existing center rearview mirror, you may find that the additional weight from the S500, which isn't all that much, but it may be enough to cause a shaking of the center rearview mirror in your vehicle, causing the reflection in the S500 to be a bit bouncy and somewhat distracting. When I asked 70My about this issue, they suggested that I purchase a third-party mounting bracket to mount the S500 main unit directly to the front windshield. To install the bracket that attaches to the S500, you need to remove the two rubber strips on the front face of the S500 main unit. That exposes 4 mounting screw areas that the bracket will attach to the main unit. You attach the bracket to the S500 case using the longer screws provided with the bracket, and I've given the dimensions of 116mm by 50mm for the screw hole locations on the S500 case. When you purchase the third-party adapter kit, you need to select an adapter bracket that's best suited for your vehicle. Next, you take that adapter bracket and you mount it to the bracket that you've already attached to the S500. After that's installed, you can then take the S500 and mount it to your front windshield. In this section, I'll discuss my final thoughts, including pros and cons of the 70My S500 rear view dash camera. The first pro for the S500 is the image sensor is the newer Sony Starvis 2 IMX675 image sensor. It's nice to see that 70mi is using one of the newer image sensors on the market. The next item on my list of pros is that the S500 has a supercapacitor instead of an internal lithium-based battery. Lithium batteries don't tend to last very long in hotter environments like where I live, so I consider it also safer to use a supercapacitor in the hotter environment as well. I no longer review any product that has a lithium battery internal to the product. The next item on my list of pros is the backup camera feature. Using the trigger wire that's connected to the rear camera, which is connected to the reverse lights of the vehicle, it knows when you've entered into the reverse gear of your vehicle, and it presents this view, which has a field of view that's adjustable up and down, and you can adjust the guidance lines. Moving on to the next feature, we have high dynamic range support in both the front and rear cameras. This should assist in getting plate captures at night especially, and there's no user setting to turn it on and off, it's just on all of the time. The next item on the list of pros is one I consider to be a user convenience and a safety feature, which is voice control. There are 6 commands that allow you to control the operations of the S500, and I consider the turn off screen feature a major one since the backup camera view, when you exit that feature, it leaves the screen on. I would like to see the firmware updated so it goes back to the mode that it was before going into the backup camera view, but at least you do have the ability to use the command turn off screen and make that easy without having to reach for the screen on the S500. The next pro on the list is what 70mi calls the adaptable design of the S500 main case, and that gives you an extendable body to allow you to move the front camera lens to a position that can avoid the center rearview mirror on your vehicle. It has the mounting straps that allow you to mount it on the existing center rearview mirror if that's something that will support the weight from the S500. And then one of the nice features I like with the actual lens adjustment, of course you have up, down, left, right, but you also have it as a rotatable adjustment so you can get the horizon adjusted correctly as well. Moving on to the next item, which is the rear camera. It has a waterproof case which allows it to be mounted on the outside of the vehicle. That supports a variety of vehicle types, be it a box truck or a passenger sedan, whatever, it should be applicable to your vehicle. In my particular case, I installed it on the inside since I didn't want to drill a hole to run the cable through, but you have to pick the appropriate installation location for your vehicle. To take advantage of the backup camera feature, you do need to connect the trigger wire that's connected to the rear camera to tell the S500 when the reverse lights are on, so it knows when to go into the backup camera view. The last item on my list of pros is the fact that the S500 does support parking mode recording operations. To allow that to be functional, you need to purchase the optional 70mi MyDrive UP02 3-wire hardwire kit. With that installed and used with the S500, you can take advantage of the collision detection parking mode or the time-lapse parking mode, or a combination of both. If you've configured the S500 to only have collision detection parking mode enabled, the S500 will go into a very deep sleep when the vehicle's ignition is turned off, and will go into a low power consumption state of about 2 milliamps or 0.03 watts, which should support parking mode operations for a very long period of time on your vehicle's battery or a dashcam battery pack. When an impact is detected, the S500 will wake up. After about 6 seconds, it will start recording video for 30 seconds in length, and then after that, it will go back into its deep sleep state. For time-lapse by itself, when that's enabled without collision detection, it will record video at 1 frame per second with a playback speed of 30 frames per second, but only for the front camera. There is no rear camera video recorded in time-lapse mode. If collision detection and time-lapse are enabled together, it will record it in time-lapse mode until an impact occurs, and then it will transition to the collision detection 30-second videos, and then after that's done, it will transition back to time-lapse. Take a look at the power consumption section of this video where I explain that in the notes section a little bit more in detail. Now my list of pros is done. Let's get into my list of cons or things I would like to see improve with the S500 in future releases. The first item I like to see improved for the S500 is the time-lapse parking mode feature. It only records video for the front camera, so if something takes place behind your vehicle, you're not going to see it, and if you have collision detection parking mode enabled with time-lapse, it will take about 5 to 6 seconds for the collision detection video to start recording for the rear. So if an impact occurs at the rear, you don't see what leads up to the impact. So I would like to see, at least as a configuration option, to allow the user to select the option of recording rear video for the time-lapse parking mode feature. Next thing I'd like to see improved with the S500 is give the user the ability to configure the video resolution for the front and rear cameras. Right now there is no such option, and they're fixed at 2592 by 1944 30 frames per second for the front, and 1920 by 1080 25 frames per second for the rear. I would like to see a 16 by 9 aspect ratio for the front, such as 2560 by 1440 resolution 30 frames per second. That way there's a lot less of the sky being recorded and far less of the dashboard of your vehicle being recorded as well. Next item I'd like to see improved for the S500 is the backup camera mode. When you go into the backup camera mode and then return to either park or drive or some other gear, it leaves the screen on. So at night or even daytime, the screen being on may be a bad thing or too bright, and you have to either turn off the screen by pressing the power button quickly or using the voice control command of turn off screen. It'd be nice to have the screen state restored to whatever it was before going into the backup camera mode. The next item on the list you might need to be aware of, you may need to purchase a third-party bracket to mount the S500 to your vehicle's windshield. It depends on the stability and stiffness of the mounting bracket for your vehicle's center rearview mirror. I found that the OEM mirror in my particular vehicle definitely would not support the weight of the S500. It wouldn't even support its own weight. And I tried a second mirror and it kind of worked, but it still was a bit too shaky. So I ended up purchasing an aftermarket mounting bracket per the recommendation of 70mi, and that seemed to reduce the shakiness in the mirror reflection image by a factor of about 80 to 90%. And it was very comparable to what an OEM mirror would be in a vehicle. So keep that in mind for your installation in your vehicle. The next item on the list may be a con for some people and not for others. The S500 does not have an internal GPS receiver, nor does it have an external one that can be plugged into it. So if you want to track speed, location, or have the real-time clock updated by the GPS time data, that will not occur with the S500. So keep that in mind making your decision about the purchase of the S500. The next item I'd like to see improved with the S500 is the mirror reflection brightness. My personal preference is it's a little too dark or it has a brown hue to it during the daytime. So everything's a little darker than a center rearview mirror from the manufacturer. And if you're used to a flip mirror at night, it doesn't have that feature where you can do a particular brightness and then flip it to a darker mode. And it doesn't have a day-night mode where it will go into a dim configuration if you have headlights approaching you from the rear. It does dim the headlights from the rear decently. It's safe, but it's just not quite at the brightness level that I would prefer. It'd be nice if this were user configurable or give a true day-night mode configuration for this mirror. Next item on the list, I'd like to see 70mi offer its own CPL filter for the S500 front camera. I have found an aftermarket one on AliExpress, but there's none offered directly from 70mi. Since the S500 sits quite a bit further back from the windshield than a typical dash camera, since it's mounted to the center rearview mirror or even using the third-party mount to connect it to the windshield, there's an increased chance of reflections from things like the display screen on the infotainment system or the instrument panel causing reflections or glare in the windshield. So I'd like to see something offered from 70mi to take care of the situation. The next item on the list might be an issue for vehicles with multiple drivers. If each driver needs to reposition the center rearview mirror to a different position to have the mirror reflection at the appropriate position for their seating position, then that will impact the aim of the front camera. Now, the up and down is not as much of an issue since it's such a wide field of view for the vertical field of view, but the horizontal field of view, so if you adjust the left and right position of the center rearview mirror, it will cause it to possibly not catch the edge or the full horizontal field of view that you would like. So keep that in mind when making this purchase decision for your vehicle. The last item on the list is not for the S500, but for the UP02 hardware kit. It has a low voltage cutoff feature with a fixed cutoff value of 11.8 volts for 12 volt systems, and I would imagine it's double that for 24 volt systems. But the fact that it's a fixed value means it might be inappropriate for certain vehicles that are sensitive to battery voltages below 12.2 volts. So I'd like to see 70mi offer a UP03 or whatever the next generation of this would be, having a user configurable low voltage cutoff value. One thing I forgot to put on this list of cons and I'd like to see improved for the S500, and I've mentioned in the app demonstration section of this video, is the fact that the S500 only supports 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi connections. I would like to see 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi connection supported that allows a much quicker download time for the videos off the S500 to your device. Thanks for watching my 70mm S500 rearview dash camera review video. Make sure you check out the video description section if you've decided to purchase the product. I was provided a non-affiliate link to the product on the 70my.store website and a discount code of 25Robert, so check out that information in the video description section. If you learned something from this video about the 70my S500 rearview dash camera, make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that bell notification to be notified when I upload new videos just like this. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.